So, yeah, let's settle in. Just get comfortable in your sitting posture. You can close your eyes or just lower your gaze. Letting the body soften. The words from the Sutta on loving kindness say, in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. I think it's interesting and helpful to just see if you feel safe right now. And if you do, and I hope you do, just kind of taking that in. And if you feel safe, that you can relax. You're okay. There can be a tendency for us to kind of build up tension or stress across the course of a day. And so that we find ourselves in this kind of anxious or agitated state, even though nothing is really going on to cause that. Just the accumulation of daily pressures, interactions, or just thoughts, feelings. But to very intentionally cultivate a sense of safety and ease. So it's with this kind of attitude that we intertwine our mindfulness practice with loving kindness practice, not two separate practices, but two that really blend. Bringing awareness to the sensations in the body. And that awareness is very receptive, open, unprotected, because we know we are safe. and connecting with the breath. The breath, too, can have this quality of ease, of softness, gentleness, not making the breath in any particular way, but just observing the soft qualities of breath. And letting the mind soften as well. It's natural that the mind will wander when we try to direct it to the simple experience of breath and body. So our response to that wandering, to the thoughts that appear in the mind, is really key in the amount of serenity that we can derive from sitting. We learn to accept the thoughts, to judge them or analyze them, to see them as natural, and then return to the breath, return to the body. If the mind is particularly busy, check in to see if there's some mood or emotional state behind that busyness. Just feeling into the body again. Often, when the mind is busy, it's because there's some underlying state that's that's charging up the mind, charging up the thoughts. And no matter how often we let go of the thoughts and come back to the breath, we aren't actually addressing or seeing clearly the motivating force behind the thoughts. If we go to the feeling, the felt experience that's running those thoughts, that can be the place where we let go. Letting go really involves just being with, we might say, let be, but really feeling, not trying to get away from our feelings, shut them down, meditate them away, but letting them become our meditation. With the breath, we breathe into the felt experience. All right, welcome everyone. Um, so the motivation for writing this book, Living Kindness, was the sense that loving kindness, as it's sort of presented in a lot of Buddhist and mindfulness circles, is kind of simplistic, and misses some of the kind of key points that the Buddha kind of made about this practice. And I suppose the thing that I most wanted to get at was the idea that rather than focusing so much on cultivating love, that a lot of what the Buddha talked about was working at letting go of hate. And we see this in the Metta Sutta itself, where he says that he says, let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. But the sutta where this is probably most kind of deeply expressed is one called the Simile of the Saw. And I'll read a little bit about it from this. Is the third chapter of Living Kindness, page 48, if you're reading along. In this sutta, a series of vignettes build to a shocking description of the level of forgiveness and loving kindness the Buddha expects from his followers. The theme of the sutta is the challenge of maintaining non-ill will in the face of attacks, verbal or physical. Here we see one of the rhetorical teaching strategies of the Buddha. He seems to understand that a positive declaration to love everyone can trigger grasping, so instead points us toward letting go of the obstructions to love. In this way, his rhetoric mirrors the teachings themselves. Letting go is the path to freedom, so he tells us what to let go of. If instead he had set out some ideal to strive for, it would just give people something else to chase after. And again, the implication is that our natural state, when rid of these negative qualities, is a positive one. That when hatred is removed, love is naturally revealed. That when greed subsides, generosity is spontaneous. This is an essential Buddhist concept, that our fundamental human nature is loving and wise. The work of Buddhist practice is to abandon the things that obscure those qualities in us. And I've been doing some writing this week on another sutta and kind of making the same point. It's I guess there's not that many different things to say ultimately when we're looking at the teachings of the Buddha. But I think there is such a tendency of the human mind to grasp after things and to, I want to get enlightened, or I want to be more loving. And we can get into this kind of cycle of grasping. And and along with it comes the judging when we fall short. And so if we take this other tack on this with this work, that we're not trying to get something, but rather let go of things, then it's simpler in a way. I mean, partly because, you know, we don't really know what we're trying to get. Like, especially when you say something like, I want to be enlightened. It's like, we don't know what that is, right? So, uh, until we get there, presumably. But we do know what anger is. We do know what greed is. We do know what clinging is because we feel those things. And so we can actually address those things. And then when we let go of them, we experience those moments, at least, of, of freedom that come with that. So, to then bring this into the recovery realm, just to make the connections explicit here, the problem for an addict is not that they need to get something, like getting sober or getting into recovery is not an acquisition, right? We don't not getting anything. We're getting there the same way that the Buddha talks about. We're getting there by letting go of the addictive behaviors, of the substances, of the attitudes. And, I mean, what's difficult about this? Well, addiction itself um, is a kind of implanted habit, which quite obviously, because it is habitual, is difficult to stop. So the idea that, oh, I'm going to get something, I'm going to take a drug that'll make this craving go away, or I'm going to go to rehab and the rehab is going to fix me, it can have some appeal instead of, oh, there's this thing that I'm deeply ingrained into doing, and that I have this craving for, and it's the thing that I know. This is the other piece of it. I think that's so important. It's the the thing that I know that I identify with. If I let go of this, what am I going to be? What's going to be there on the other side? Do I really think I'm going to be okay? Will I be okay? Is that safe? I don't know what that's going to mean to not have this thing anymore, to not have alcohol, to not have drug. And of course, in our mind, we project out what that's going to mean. I mean, I remember distinctly my sense that my future was just this bland gray landscape once I stopped drinking and using, as though my life were this colorful and joyful thing at the time, which it was not in the least. But that, again, this is the habit, right? We just like, but that element of attachment, of identifying, is so strong that we feel more safe clinging to the suffering that we know than we do stepping into the potential of freedom that we don't know. And that's what we mean by identifying with something. That's what we're talking about. It's like this feeling is familiar. This way of being is familiar. You know? And so again, we're being brought up to the edge of the unknown. And of course, this is one of our great fears, is fear of the unknown. What will it be like? So again, we would rather, we feel safer, right? Talking about safety tonight, we feel safer somehow in this known suffering. It's really quite interesting. I mean, I think it's really important to understand, because I was actually writing about this today in regards to depression, and it's the same thing. It's just like identifying, this is who I am, this is what I'm familiar with, um, and it's. I mean, to me, the it's helpful to deconstruct it in this way, to see how it works, so I understand it. Because as long as I'm just being reactive and running on this, habitual pattern, this treadmill of behavior, I can't, I can stay caught in that very simple kind of um, framework and duality of, oh, like, oh, it's scary. I'd rather be here than there. But when I really take it apart and I see how it's working, and I bring my conscious mind into this so that I can say, is that true? Is that what I really want? Do I really think that um, there's no happier life for me out there? Which I think is also one of the messages that we're kind of working with. I mean, our addiction itself, we know it is initially is a kind of protection. It's a it's a solution for us, a solution for dealing with the feelings and experiences of life that are we find unmanageable. And so when we get to a point when the behavior, when the addiction becomes unmanageable, we're forced into this question of looking and saying, well, wait, I, life wasn't manageable for me before I started drinking and using. How is it going to be manageable if I stop, And I, I know it's not true for everybody, but many of us made that initial move to, away from feeling and being present and sort of dealing with life on life's terms into addictive behavior that started for many of us in our adolescence or teenage years, or maybe into our early 20s, but at a time when it's partly you could say our brains weren't fully developed, but we were not mature, we weren't full adults, and so we didn't know how to cope. I know that was the case for me when I started to drink at 16 and take drugs at 17. I didn't have any life tools, and I was overwhelmed with the feelings that were hitting me. I didn't know how to deal with it, so drinking and using became my solution, and that might have made sense at that point, but by the time I stopped drinking and using at 35, I was ready to become an adult, at 35. I'm ready now. Okay. I'll turn myself into the adult police to be an adult. But it really was like, I very much lived on that kind of adolescent mindset through my 20s. And like, oh, this is what I have to do, because it was my only kind of frame of reference for how to manage my emotions. And when I actually did get clean, it was kind of like discovering that this other being, this other Kevin had been growing up somewhat, or was ready to grow up, behind the scenes without my really knowing it. So that when that came, then I was able to like go, oh yeah, actually, you know, I can make adult decisions now, and I can act like an adult, show up, you know, do a job, stick with things, be honest, think about how to advance my life, how to move my career and my relationships and everything forward, and how to grow spiritually as well. So, um, so I think that this idea of kind of somewhat deconstructing our uh, way of understanding ourselves and a way of understanding what we're doing as addicts can help us to kind of break free of that. I'm looking down because I still have the book on my lap, and I'm like, wait, I'm not talking about the book. I'm on a different topic now, as usual. Well, those of you who hang out with me know that we usually start in one place and wind up somewhere else. But it's all sort of the same place anyway. What the starting point, of course, was about letting go rather than acquiring. And that, as I say, even with recovery, we don't acquire something, we let go of something. So the sutta, the simile of the saw, I'll come back to this a little bit and talk about it. And in the sutta study class, we went through this, and it's one that I just find it's so striking that I guess I'm sort of drawn to its the extreme nature of what the Buddha says at the climax of the sutta. He says, even if bandits were to sever you savagely limb by limb with a two-handled saw, one who gave rise to a mind of hate toward them would not be carrying out my teachings. So even if there are some people who are sawing your limbs off, you're not supposed to hate them. That's, as we say in AA, what an order I can't go through with it. It's a bit much, but the point, and you can look at other teachings, is that the Buddha really saw hatred as a useless and, I guess, the most destructive emotion. He talks about, in other places, he talks about how hatred makes you ugly. He says, when you hate someone, when you hate your enemy, you are giving your enemy what they want, because you're making yourself ugly and you're making yourself suffer, because hatred, to be filled with hatred, is to be in pain. It's painful to be filled with hatred. It's a very tricky thing to work with, because there are things that people do that are really not okay, and that need to be stopped. When people are doing harm, and there are reasons, really good reasons, to be angry with people and to hate people, particularly when they're doing harm, injustices. We can be just angry about injustice that might not be directed toward the person, like an institution or a system. And so, I brought up this point because there's a point earlier in the sutta where the Buddha tells this monk, who's very devoted to all the nuns, that he shouldn't, that he should never let his mind well, let me read it from my book, because I'm not good at remembering things. He says, the Buddha tells this monk that no matter what anyone says about the nuns, he should think like this: my mind will be unaffected. I shall utter no evil words. I shall abide compassion for his welfare, for this person who's treating the monks poorly, with the mind of loving kindness, without inner hate. He says, even if someone hits the nuns with their hand, or with a clod, or with a stick, or with a knife, your mind should remain unaffected. And the first thought again is, well, wait, like, it's not okay to attack people, violently. How are you telling? Is the Buddha saying we should just be absolute pacifists? It's a very challenging question, right? There was a lot of debate in Buddhist circles after 9/11 of what was an appropriate way to respond. And when I took this question to Ajahn Pasano, who is one of the senior monks in the Thai forest tradition, and who was very generous in helping me with this book. And he pointed out what should have been obvious to me, which is that the Buddha says your mind should remain unaffected. He does not say you shouldn't stop a person from, being violent towards the nuns. He said that rather than a moral injunction, we were actually being given a vision how to hold such a situation in our heart and mind. So how we're going to respond is a different question. But this, of course, becomes another one of the great challenges that the Buddha puts forth, which is, can I see injustice and respond to injustice, or respond to harm forcefully without anger? That's the great challenge. Can I do it? Can I act against, perpetrators of harm without hating them in my heart, without being overwhelmed with that feeling? And I'm saying that as a question. I certainly am not someone who does that, but I do try, and I do see how painful it is to be angry. And so when I catch myself being in the midst of anger, I do try to calm myself, so that I'm not giving my enemy what they want, right? It's like it's like owning the libs, right? It's like, that's what, if somebody is, trying to make you angry through their behavior. I mean, it's a typical kind of thing that an older sibling will do, right? Teasing the younger sibling in order to make them angry, because you know that it's painful for them to be angry. And so you like watching, you play with them, right? You tease them. I have some experience with that, personal experience as a youngest brother. So a couple different themes tonight, non-ill will, and the broader question of of letting go being this core principle of Dharma practice, and not as opposed to acquisition. So with that, I will open it up and see if there's any comments or questions tonight. Thank you. Julie, I see you waving.
Thank you. Good evening, Kevin and Sangha. It's lovely to be here as always. Just a few things arising for me. Of course, there's the quote, hatred never ceases by hatred. And let's see, I can't remember but only by love. And this is the eternal rule. I do think when we see what we may consider hatred, hateful actions, that it's really from a place of first we accept that that's the truth of what's happening, and then from a place of wisdom we can respond skillfully. I resonate with there are hateful acts, and to react from a place of hatred and ill will is not skillful, and I don't think it creates good karma. I think the consequence of for myself, my experience is even with an angry or if I have malintent, the result is not good. So what I do when I see something may look similar, whether I do it from anger and ill will or from a place of calm and wisdom, but the intention is very different. It usually does result differently, but the action that I undertake may look the same to somebody else, but the intention is different. I think for me, it makes a difference. Number two, I like what Greg has proposed in his meetings, and he's not the creator of this, of course, but I think love is a tall order, which is why I really appreciate living kindness instead of loving kindness. Kindness is much more accessible for me than love. But if we can't love somebody, can we at least refrain from hating them?
Yeah.
Can we refrain from ill will if we cannot? So again, it's an attitude, and I found that approach very, very helpful, because I can I can more easily let go of hatred, refrain from practicing hatred, than I can actively source love or kindness when that's not real for me in this moment. And I'll stop there. Thank you for letting me share.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. And it's that same idea that we can feel the hate that's here. It can't, if you're not feeling the love, it's hard to like pull it in, but you can feel the hate. So it's like, okay, here it is. This is something I can work with. I can let go of this because it's present, as it's real. And yeah, and there's a piece in the Visuddhimagga, which is a commentaries on the suttas, where it suggests that if we're working with the enemy or the difficult person in our loving kindness meditation, we should just try to make them neutral. We don't have to actually love them. If we can just move them from someone we hate to just like, now I'm like, okay, I don't have any strong feelings about you. That's an accomplishment to work towards. You might not all know each other, but most of you have been here with me for quite a bit. So there's no reason not to speak if you're feeling self-conscious or shy, or maybe you just don't have it, nothing comes to mind to say. Will there be a difference between the version of living kindness, the existing version, and the Shambhala version? That remains to be seen. I don't know. I'm not planning on making any major changes, but I might add something here and there. Hello, Julia. Thanks for raising your hand.
Hi, sorry I was late. This topic was perfect for me for this past few years. I've been stuck in the hatred part. So it's an ideal topic for me. And, anytime I see an injustice, I want to stand up, really strong. I have this strong reaction, and it really doesn't serve the situation or me or the person. If there's a person, injustice is going against them. So I've been trying to find my way in that recently, and today was one good example. And I was able to sit back and observe the situation. There was a Zoom meeting in regards to my son, and there was my ex-husband was there and just making really off the wall comments, and we were all observing it. And I felt some sadness for the change in him. I shouldn't be so specific, but I don't know how to generalize it. And so I've been stuck in the hating of that behavior, and the that I can't control it, that and how it appears to harm my children. And I've been stuck in that victim role. I'm very aware of that. And what's in my best interest? What's in the best interest of my children? To stay stuck in the hatred? And so I think it is important to be neutral and to be, focused on the solution, and really pray for that other person, whatever that way, shape, or form that I can do. For me, it's meditation, I guess. And so it's painful, I think I've spent my life grasping situations where there is suffering, where I'm caring for somebody and then they don't get well, and I'm disappointed, and it's just all suffering, right? And I'm not really truly present in living my life. So, and I think with my addiction, it was the same thing. So it feels really good to be sober and to be meditating and to enjoy the moment, rather than, grasping to my idea of how things should be. They just are the way they are, it just is. And I think my boys are going to be just fine. It's just a difficult journey. And I if I don't make a big deal about it, and just be there to support them, and teach them something different than what I learned. So anyways, thanks. It was a perfect topic, and thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you. I just, there's a special kind of suffering, I think, that comes around divorce, and when there's kids and all of that, special in that it's harder to move past than just, an ordinary affair or relationship where it's like it's over and then it's like, you don't have to see them, but when there's kids and all of that, it just, and the idea of having to see your ex. I mean, when I think about some of my exes, it's a long time ago, but I think if I had to see them, be a lot harder. It's kind of like the difference between quitting drinking and trying to manage food addiction, because you have to eat every day. So I don't have any experience with what you're going through, and I would not want to make any offhand like, oh, just let go. I think that what you said is really wise, which is like just to be neutral if you can. That seems like a really good protective method, because obviously you have to get as much as you can, be disentangled emotionally as much as you can. That's the whole point of getting divorced, is to be disentangled. And it's like, but you stay entangled, and how do you disentangle? And so, yeah, to work with that. And it is interesting. I find that I can, if I sit regularly and sit with the feelings and breathe with the feelings, that the feelings, whatever they are, like I had some feelings this week, and and that were very intense, and they went on for a few days, and I kept coming back and like not really acting on them, and just breathing. And there was this kind of, and then I took some action that sort of had to be taken around a couple of things that helped the things to move along. But that remembering impermanence, that it'll change if I'm willing to just be with it and allow it to be there without churning it up. If I keep feeding it, it stays alive. If I don't keep feeding it, then it gradually fades away, like everything. The feelings just have a lifespan, kind of half-life. And if I stop feeding them and I just sit with them and allow them to be, they gradually, something else happens, and then I have feelings about something else. Thanks, Julia. Clarice, I see a hand on a black background.
Hi. Kind of trying to work something out in my head.
Uh-oh, that sounds
Can
like
you see
trouble.
me?
No.
I don't know why that is the case.
I see a flower for a
There's
second.
the flowers and then,
It's all right. Don't worry about it.
okay, I know my picture was showing up before and there's light on me. In any event, I've been trying to work out something in my head, how to relate to, okay, so we started out the meditation. The busy mind, and what was my busy mind? Well, that's what I was encountering in the meditation, perseveration. And what was the perseveration covering up? And it's kind of, well, there's a pain today about, there's so much I haven't been getting done. There's this backlog of stuff I've been avoiding. And I almost think that this is actually a big drive behind my addictive process, is to ease the suffering of everything that I'm avoiding. And, I'm trying to, I realize how much of my time is engaged in distraction as one way to ease that suffering. And I'm trying to relate to what you're talking about with hatred. And then I realize hatred, I hate sitting down and doing the things I should be doing.
That does sound like a problem.
Right, all the sort of tasks and, busy work and form filling and et cetera, et cetera. And how can I kind of find a neutral space with that?
Yeah.
Really. And, I'm reminded of, as a psychotherapist, you can kind of, there's this sort of holding space, or, even you're saying observing space as a psychotherapist, even just breathing with the person, being present.
Right.
So, okay, so maybe just being present with myself while I'm hating.
Well,
doing
if I may, Clarice,
okay.
the really critical piece in here from a mindfulness standpoint is to see the difference between the hating and the doing of the thing that you hate. Those are two different things. So the doing it is what I would call unpleasant. Okay. But the hating is the mental pushing it away, which this is the classic teaching the Buddha has of the two arrows. The first arrow is the unpleasant thing, and the second arrow is your reaction to it, which redoubles. And really, that tends to be much more the problem. Once we surrender to the thing that's unpleasant, we just do it, like washing the dishes, and if you're just doing it and you're not thinking about it or fighting it, then it just becomes another activity, which maybe it even can stop being unpleasant because you're not fighting it. That's my therapy for you.
Right. So I'm glad this is recorded so I can sort of unpack that. But
no, it's not complicated. It's not complicated.
Yeah,
you can feel.
But it's a shift. It's a subtle shift.
Yes, yes, it's so when you are feeling that, like, I don't want to do this shit, stop, breathe,
Right.
feel the I don't want to do it feeling, and just feel what that feels like and breathe with that. Oh, that's the I don't want to do it feeling. Okay. And
And
then
just do that over and over.
do you start your task and notice whenever the mind jumps in with I don't want to do this,
Right.
how it changes. And you'll start to see the difference.
Right. Right. And there's some things I can do that with
Well,
better than
yeah,
others.
it's up to you.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Unfortunately, we're way behind in putting the recordings up. So it's going to be probably a couple of weeks before we get this up for you to hear it again. But
No, it's okay. The double arrow thing helps.
Maybe that'll be perfect timing for you anyway.
No, the double arrow thing helps a lot.
Yeah, it's a good image, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to use that when I'm procrastinating.
You're gonna when
You're
you're
going to use
procrastinating.
it, Kevin, when you're like, I
know.
don't want to go put the videos on the website.
I really want to, but there's really important things that I have to do, like, Well, I appreciate everybody dropping by. Thanks for dropping by on Friday night. Like a little bit of a, in like this is a sitcom or something, Stop by anytime. Nice to see everybody. Nothing big going on. Sunday night, I'm teaching at the Benicia Sangha at 6:00. And I don't know. I think they have a website. You might find it if you were desperate to
Sorry,
see.
say again, Kevin,
Benicia. I'll type it in for those who don't live in Northern California. I'll do a quick Google search for you. Let's see now.
While you're doing that, Kevin, I'll just, because I know you didn't see my email about registration.
Oh, yeah.
I have now 18 registered.
Woohoo.
And a few more interested. So we do have that information in the chat.
Right.
Those who are
For people who are interested in coming to a residential retreat in late October.
Yeah. And I do remember, Kevin, I've been thinking about this a little bit. When I came to Spirit Rock I hadn't seen you in a while, and I came to a Friday night and we were catching up, and you told me about the spring retreat in 2019, which was my first retreat. And you encouraged retreat, and you were right. And it was a wonderful experience. So I'm just putting that plug in because, yeah. And the more I'm starting to think about it, I'm was thinking in the meditation today about looking forward to being together. So
yeah, it'll be really nice. Yeah, definitely anybody who can make it should come. And we do have some scholarship money, so if finances are an issue, we can very likely help you. So thank you all. I will be back Tuesday morning, 10 a.m. Pacific time. Hope to see you then. And we will continue to stay sober and let go.